Hello and welcome to Newspeak. I'm Peter Whittle. This week, I'm very pleased to say, joined again by who's becoming a regular guest actually, Peter Lloyd, author and controversial columnist, I would say, Peter. Amy Gallagher of Stand Up to Work, and our senior fellow, Dr. Philip Kiszely, of course, who's also our national organiser with some news, right, Philip?
I have some news, yes. On the back of our cancellation, was it last week or the week before, in Manchester, we are attempting another conference. Hopefully this time we will be successful. The conference will be on the 1st of November and it will be in London. Tickets aren't on sale yet, but they will be soon. So I'm just kind of announcing it now. Right. We've got some fantastic speakers, yes, including our very own Emma Webb. Oh. So I'm really looking forward to that. It's going to be a big day. I think Rafe is going to be speaking there as well. I'll be there. Hopefully you will be there as well. Yeah. It's going to be superb. So I'm really looking forward to that. You can see the rest of the locals events scrolling beneath me as I speak, hopefully. And things are just, we had a get together yesterday, didn't we?
Yes, we had
in the studio, and it was just fantastic to see so many locals, organisers and members here. It just feels as though things are really burgeoning and things are really happening.
Yes, it was great. As for this cancellation, as I think we were talking about recently, it's a kind of badge of honour.
Yeah, congratulations.
Don't you think?
It's so wonderful. Seriously, it's really good.
Listen, I'm an old hat at this, okay? I've been cancelled so many times, you know, it's great. But yes, I think it is. One of the really good things about it is locals being locals. There's a big campaign. Everybody is writing very snotty outrage from Harrogate emails to Green King, or the parent company of Green King, and boycotting it as well. Unfortunately, this is what we have to do. We have to push back on this stuff, and we have to play their game, because they simply cannot shut us down because they don't like our politics.
Well, and also it gives the lie to the idea that somehow this is all kind of going. Yeah. You know, that somehow we've peaked. It's not, actually. It's not. Back onto more mundane, but unfortunately pressing things, and that is this week we've had the Labour conference, actually. Peter, what did you make of our dear leader's speech?
I thought it was sinister, actually. Yeah. Especially when you view it in the context of the fact that Farage's security has just been cut.
Yeah.
Yes.
By Starmer's government.
Yeah. This is the case, and this was only announced today by
exactly. So Farage's government-funded security was cut by 75% just 2 weeks ago. And then, of course, we have Starmer on stage essentially saying that he's a Nazi sympathizer and that he's a bigot who needs to be overthrown. And, you know, this is not even a month after Charlie Kirk was assassinated. And I knew Charlie personally. And so for me, it feels very inappropriate, very inflammatory, incendiary, and not British in terms of how we do politics. This isn't normally this isn't the tone of the dialogue. Yeah. It's usually a bit classier than this, or at least it used to be. And the irony is that these are the people who for a long time, you know, after Joe Cox was murdered, after David Amos was murdered, said we have to lower the tone. You know, we need kinder, gentler politics. Well, where is it? Why aren't they leading by example? They're all hypocrites and they're all liars.
Yes. Same.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, what was really surprising to me was when Starmer said, I think he was talking about Reform's policy about removing the indefinite leave to remain policy, and he said, if you agree with this policy, Reform's policy about migration, you are the enemy. Yeah. And to me, as you said, I'm not. Hearing an American politician speak like that, I wouldn't be surprised. But our politics is a bit politer and more courteous. And just saying like a whole group of people, you are the enemy. It's like, where does that leave us? We know that 70% of the population think that immigration is too high. We know that Reform are topping the polls. So are you saying all of those people are your enemy? Yeah. And it's just so divisive. And good on Farage for sort of fighting back. He said that for him, this is the line in the sand where he's finally realised that Starmer is unfit to be Prime Minister. And, you know, as you said, all the rhetoric is so damaging. And, you know, bearing in mind, it wasn't that long ago that Starmer gave this Island of Strangers speech, where it just, to me, I feel like the Labour Party are totally schizophrenic. They're putting out like anti-immigration sentiment that would, by their own standards, be racist. And then they're falling hard on reform and saying they're all racist. Shabima Mahmood came out and said, actually, Farage is even worse than a racist, which I didn't think I thought racist. And then they said, what do you mean by that? And she couldn't define it because, of course, in our culture, the worst thing you can be is a racist. So to beyond that, it's like, what, are you just the devil then? I don't know.
Transphobic racist.
Maybe that's what it is, yeah. But I think it's just, as you said, just desperation. The fact that they're coming so hard on reform now, when a general election, we're nowhere near a general election. You know, they didn't even focus on the Tories. They just obviously they see reform as their big competitor. But to come out with all of this language now, you know, it feels why now? Why are you ramping it up now? We've got a long way to go. And
well, they've also got nowhere to go verbally. Almost.
No, they've got
to start calling them pedos or something.
Yeah, and it totally overshadowed any policies that they were going to talk about. Apparently, I mean, this new ID, digital ID that's coming in, they barely mentioned that. And you just come away with basically the message of the Labour Party conference is that Farage is a racist and we don't like Farage. And it just shows that they have nothing to offer themselves, really.
I mean, seriously, I was listening to the video, I was listening to the speech, and I was thinking, who is Starmer's speechwriter?
Yeah.
Who is doing the Labour Party's PR? It has to be a plant by Farage, because what they did,
such a gift. It's such a gift.
It was such a gift to the Reform Party. It really, really was.
I was listening to it. First of all, it's so bizarre seeing all these Labour people waving their little union flags and flags of. I've never seen anything like it. It's completely bizarre. They are appropriating. Not only are they trying to appropriate Reform's policies and saying they're not, they're actually appropriating Reform's aesthetic, which has always been an anathema to them, hasn't it? But you said, Peter, you just made a really interesting point there. You said it was sinister. I agree, but I'd go one step further. I thought it was kind of really quite evil because he was essentially, as Nigel said, he was painting a target on Nigel's back, saying this is the uber racist, go for him. And I was thinking as I was listening to it, it's that sense of the banality of evil because she was talking like this, and this man has had absolutely a charisma bypass. He's appalling, isn't he? You know, and you're dropping off, and there's a response to it. Oh God, what's he said? You know, it was really banal. It was really evil. It's quintessentially, Labour 2025. But of course, David Lammy, our favourite cabinet our favourite
historian.
Yeah. Well, he said
our favourite Welsh choir boy.
Well, he said that Farage was flirting with the Hitler Youth.
Yeah.
Which is completely untrue.
Which would he'd have to be in his 90s if he was.
Interesting, actually. I don't know if you picked this up, but when Nigel did his reply, which I think they all do now from the Reform headquarters and things, he's got a great setup there.
Yeah.
He looked genuinely quite shocked by it.
Well, yeah, you were saying that, and I think you're absolutely right. Yeah, because you know him pretty well. Obviously.
But he kind of looked, it's essentially, as you're saying, they are almost saying, do your worst, when it comes to attacking him.
Ultimately, it's a set of confused people. It's a set of desperate people, and it's the politics of desperation. They are frightened. They are fearful. They're not only fearful of Farage because and Reform, and they're pointing all of their rhetoric at Reform, but by definition, they're frightened of the British public because the British public are very much behind Reform. So there is something. It's almost like a bunker mentality, and it comes out in the confusion. It comes out in the desperation, and it's almost like they're governing by the day. And it's quite. If they're frightened, I'm frightened as well because I don't want these stupid, silly people. Steering the ship.
One of the things that was so confusing was Starmer said something about that Nigel Farage hates Britain, and he's anti-Britain, and he has nothing positive to say about Britain. And I was thinking, that's you. That's the Labour Party.
Yeah.
You know, Farage he sings the national anthem. He's very patriotic. He waves the flag. He says that schools should teach about the positive aspects of British history. And then you've got Starmer that just, you know, it's totally globalist, totally does not stick up for our interests at all. And the idea that they could say that Farage is anti-Britain or anti-British, you just feel like you're through the looking glass at this point. It's just everything's topsy-turvy, and they are just grasping at things where you think that doesn't even make sense.
Yeah, I know it doesn't, but you see, this is a kind of global mentality. Cameron did a similar thing with UKIP and those, and he said, I like Britain how it is now.
Right.
And basically, you are a bunch of, what was it they called us? Fruitcakes,
yeah.
And closet racists and fruit flies or whatever it was. And then, of course, what happened in UKIP, they went out and they had a time aid of all these things, of these little fruit flies and everything like that. But that's what I sort of feel. It's this kind of, the Tories have it all the time. Oh, I'm not as negative as you. Tories must be the most romantic, sorry, not Tories, I mean conservative-minded people. Yeah. Most romantic and most optimistic, actually, of people. Well, they get a bad rap for being realistic, you know, and not for being...
And actually, Farage, to me, is the only, or the Reform Party, are the only party giving a positive vision of our future. You know, it's the only party that makes me feel like there could be something positive. The idea that Starmer would say they're not positive when they're coming out with all of these ways that we could change the country for the better.
It's small c conservatism, which Reform is rooted in small c conservatism. It's about love of country, love of culture, love of heritage, love of history, along with a realistic vision of what's possible and what we can achieve. Don't forget, this is on the back of Starmer introducing digital ID for everybody. And, you know, and if you don't play ball, then essential services are going to be taken away from you. This is dystopian stuff. This is genuinely 1984 Orwellian stuff. And yet here he is talking about love of country and saying Starmer, who I think genuinely, Farage genuinely does love his country. It's the same thing that I've talked about before. It's this gaslighting. It's this kind of psychopathy of left-wing politics. We know all about it. The first person who was talking about this kind of politics was Jeremy Corbyn, of course. And look at the state of him and your party, which is hilarious as well, isn't it? But there is something really frightening about this stuff because it's taking reality, turning it upside down, and then saying you haven't seen what you've just seen. What you've just witnessed it's gaslighting.
It's like a time warp, really, because they're operating as if we're still in the pre-digital age, as if Twitter and the truth that Twitter engenders is available. They're still operating in like the mid-80s. They're thinking, it's all right, we've got a spin doctor. We can put this out in a positive light and we can lead the narrative. That isn't the case anymore. That is, I mean, a classic point is he was going on saying he was blaming Brexit, of all things, for the boat migrants. He's like, oh, well, you know, Brexit took us out of the Dublin Agreement. I'm sorry, that was a good thing. The Dublin Agreement made us a net recipient of migrants.
But I mean,
it wasn't a good thing.
But just to pursue the point further, he blamed Brexit. He also blamed global warming as well. So it's all of these narratives. You know, we'll have this narrative, we'll have that narrative, we'll have that narrative. You will consume it and you will say nothing. No, it isn't 1985,
and
as you say.
They're still operating as though the worst thing that everybody's scared of being called is a racist. And it's like we've had these Palestine marches where there was just extreme anti-Semitism. We've seen how everybody's smeared as a racist. We've had all the critical race theory where basically if you're white, you are a racist. So this idea that this word has any power, it doesn't anymore. It just seems ludicrous when you just say, oh, your immigration policy is racist. Firstly, their policies aren't racist. It's not about race. You know, he's just saying, he's talking about indefinite leave to remain and that people, you know, anybody of any race, if you're a white Canadian, you could go home if you're not contributing to the country and we could send you back. So it's not about race, but everybody just rolls their eyes now when you could even see some of them, these Labour MPs, almost hesitating to call Farage a racist because it's like, once you've laid that that card, you've done it, and that's it. What are you going to do next? You've got another, several years of having to, you be against Nigel Farage. What, you're just going to keep saying the word racist?
Well, he's backtracked now, hasn't he? Starmer has kind of.
Oh, has he?
Yeah, he's apologised for calling.
Well, they said the policies are racist, but he might not be a racist, but we don't know if he's a racist.
He's too late because basically he's called all the supporters.
Right. Yes.
Which is now, 35%, is it?
More, I
roughly
think.
And don't forget, Starmer is the Prime Minister with the lowest approval rating ever, I think. And he, 52% of the party members don't trust him to lead anymore. No, he is in terminal decline, and he knows it. Yeah. What we saw in Liverpool in the Labour conference was a party and a leader in its death throes.
Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, just you talking about his personal rating, I think it's 13% or below. He is the most unpopular prime minister in history. This is the most unpopular.
I think Al-Qaeda is more popular than that, isn't it?
This is the most unpopular government in history, and it comes back to all of this gaslighting. I'll give you an example. They are talking now, they're castigating everybody for being ethno-nationalist. If you support reform, somehow you are ethno-nationalist. You are right of right. And yet so many of those cabinet ministers and pretty much all of the Labour Party will be marching behind the Palestinian flag. It's just beyond crazy.
In fact, when I watched it yesterday, bits of it, to see these people, all the ministers with their little Union Jacks, it was, in fact, last year that the thing was a sea of Palestinian flags, if you remember. Mm-hmm. And if you go back to 97, and that whole thing where Blair arrives it down, she was totally manufactured, and the people waving the flags were essentially Labour Party workers, in fact, I think in many ways. They were all kind of corralled into that. And it's kind of no one, surely, when they talk about plastic patches, all this, no one's buying it from Yvette Cooper, are they? Or any of these people, Lammy,
Well, it's just, you hear this is the thing about being on social media, isn't it? And actually, as Peter says, hearing the truth. So you hear one of them come out with they have a meeting, don't they, with their spin doctors. These are the buzzwords and these are the catchphrases you're going to use. And then you hear one, someone tweets it in the morning, and then they all tweet exactly the same thing. They all get the memo, don't they? A version of exactly the same set of sentences. Yeah. And you just think to yourself, you're over, you're finished.
They're like Stepford Wives. They've got no original thoughts. They've got no real leadership. No one's in charge. And the whole thing smacked of desperation.
I mean, one of the things about Farage, which I really admire, is that he doesn't read from a script. I mean, there are lots of things to criticize Nigel Farage about, but he speaks his mind. I don't think he reads speeches, does he? He just speaks, doesn't he? I mean, you'll know this because you know him quite well. It's a sense of he just gets in front of a camera. He knows what he's going to say and he says it.
Yes. He's like a well-honed act, machine now after all this time. Just before we leave this, you mentioned their ID cards. It might seem a silly question to ask, but are you incredibly opposed to them?
I am, yeah.
I signed the petition. On our side, people weren't necessarily at one point opposed to them. On our side of politics, the libertarian right were, but I remember at one time I was thinking, now that things are so out of control, I can see a point to
well, it's the foundation of a Chinese-style social credit system, I think, and they've already come out and said, as I just said before, they already came out and said, well, there will be penalties if you don't play ball, and having all of that data in one place with these idiots in charge, it's an accident waiting to happen.
To me, I've signed that. There's a petition. People know. I think over 2 million people have signed it, and I've signed it, and primarily because of the concern.
2 million.
Yeah, 2 million. So a lot of people are very much against it. your concerns about kind of social credit system, but also to me, what I have in mind is COVID, and the idea that we could, if we were facing some kind of emergency, measures that we did during the COVID, that this could be rolled out very quickly in terms of who's taken the vaccine, who hasn't, and all that sort of stuff. That for me is very much in mind that was a era where I really became aware of kind of the state overreach, and so that for that reason I would never want any kind of digital ID.
No, I wouldn't now.
No.
But there was a time where it was being seen as, for example, massive kind of overspending in the NHS.
Yes.
People who weren't really entitled to.
Yeah.
That was one way, by having an ID card.
Well, their argument was about migration, wasn't it? And the small boats and making sure that that everybody is counted for in terms of the digital ID, which to me is, it's not gonna. It's all those people that will go underground and won't have this thing.
Yeah.
So it's just.
Well, we actually talked about this a few weeks ago, didn't we? And now it's absolutely on the agenda, and they are going to implement it. I think people have changed. Like you say, that I think that petition now it's on at least 2.6 million.
Right.
So I think that's a really good illustration of how quickly things are moving at the moment. Because yes, I think most people were, certainly on our side, most people were against it. But I think people are entrenched now and absolutely against it.
Speaking of entrenchment, I mentioned earlier, about wokery and everything not being gone. Had a few kind of sort of examples of it actually in the NHS this week.
Right.
With, for example, this very bizarre sort of justification almost for first cousin marriage, wasn't there?
Yeah, really shocking. The NHS England put up a statement saying that there are some benefits to cousin marriage, something about family support, and there's an economic benefit to it, which seems very bizarre for the NHS to be offering economic advice. There's an economic benefit to not buying a prescription. You save money, but if the doctor said you need to take this medicine, that's what they're advising you on. Yeah. Really odd that they would do that. Everybody's kind of come out, even Wes Streeting, the health secretary, or Labour health secretary, has come out and said, well, we know that there's overwhelming evidence that, babies born from incest, cousin marriage, or cousin, relationships have twice as likely to have significant birth defects. That's it. We know that. So why would the NHS come out with this? And I have in mind, all the gender stuff and all of the stuff that the NHS has been pushing that wasn't evidence-based, and you think they would have learned from that. They clearly haven't. And you just think, who oversaw this thing and who put that out? We had an independent MP last year, Iqbal Mohammed, who's kind of got in on a Gaza ticket, saying that he came out in Parliament and said we shouldn't stigmatise cousin marriage, and actually the NHS should support babies born through cousin marriage, and maybe the NHS could offer genetic testing prior to, if a couple wanted to, cousins wanted to have a baby. So he's essentially saying the NHS should bend over backwards to kind of support this. And now we've gone a step further, basically saying, there are benefits to it. And then, of course, the debate is around what does the evidence say? The evidence says that, no, there are birth defects. But I would also say, hang on, it's a bit like the trans debate. And there's a common sense. We all know that this thing is wrong. We have a kind of pre-existing morality that would say, well, incest is wrong. Yes, there's this evidence that says
it's actually an instilled survival mode, isn't it?
Yeah, it's like, what's the argument that a father shouldn't have sex with his children? It's like we just know it's wrong. We know that incest is wrong.
You're being a bit judgy, aren't you?
Well, I'm stigmatising them. Yeah, I am. I am being judgmental because someone needs to be.
Yeah,
but sometimes judgment is good.
Yeah, but it's really
no. It's the one thing that I think is extraordinary. It's the one thing we're not meant to be. We are human beings. We are sophisticated adults. We are meant to be judgmental.
Yeah. Well, and to me, this kind of the idea of promoting incest of any kind, it's like going pre-civilization. It's so dark, And the NHS, I don't know what they're doing, but it is creeping in this idea of cousin marriage. You keep seeing it being pushed a little bit further, where you're having to make the argument, and you think, well, hang on, if several years ago you wouldn't need to have an argument. You just, of course, that's wrong.
Yeah.
We don't need to talk about evidence.
This is.
But of course, I should say as well, it's mainly Pakistani people that are doing this, and that's why they're kind of unsure about how to manage it.
Well, Iqbal Mohammed is the MP for Dewsbury and Batley, which, you know, that says an awful lot. I did a short report on this yesterday. It came out on this channel yesterday. I think this is about promoting cultural practices, isn't it? And it's the cultural practice of Pakistan. And around this kind of, you know, families and honor and tribal customs, there has to be what's growing around this stuff in our culture is a culture of silence. And that is extremely dangerous, as we know over the last 30 years with white working class girls in these areas like Dewsbury and Batley and Rochdale and Oldham. We know all of that thing. A culture of silence is the worst possible thing for those vulnerable girls. And yet, you know, I'm really pleased, and it's very rare I say this, but I'm really pleased that West Streeting has come out and said something, that a Labour politician, I'm pleased that a Labour politician has said this. Why they're not all up in arms saying this, I don't know, but they're not. But this, again, as I say, this culture of silence is devastating. So we all really need to push back on that. And that's one of the reasons why I did that report yesterday, because I wanted people to know about it. I did a debate over the weekend with a Pakistani lawyer. And I was talking about this. I was talking about this kind of, these modes of behavior. And he was just saying, oh, well, you're racist. You're Islamophobic. You know, there's nothing wrong with this kind of thing. And that's what you come up against. And I actually said at the time, look, you can't use that word anymore. It doesn't mean anything. These things are dangerous. Promoting cousin marriage, our own NHS promoting cousin marriage is dangerous. And we need to say it in the boldest terms possible.
Well, the NHS have since deleted.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
Yes,
The
they
memo,
have. They've
which
taken
said-
it down. We're Streeting ordered it to be taken down, I believe.
Absolutely. But I looked into it, and it was interesting, actually, because it was based on a study done last year by a professor called Sam Oddie, who is, as you might expect, a left-wing
No kidding.
medical professional. But if you read the study, even the conclusion of the study says children born from first cousin marriages are at an extremely heightened risk of medical problems. And the NHS took this and spun it to be positive. So even when the data proves these people, the activists within the NHS, are willing to spin it. And the reason they did it is they said themselves, we wanted to be culturally sensitive. I am sorry, if it were white people who were predominantly, engaging in first cousin marriage, this never would have happened.
Well, often
And
they
they
kind
would-
of bring up the royal family to try and embarrass us,
yeah.
you know, saying, oh, well, was it or whatever. That makes it okay, does it?
Yeah.
absolutely
That's the
a
only
race
thing you've
issue.
got. That's the only example
Yeah.
you've
It's
got.
absolutely a race issue. If this were white people,
If it was white people, there would be a national health campaign to stop it from happening.
Right.
You know,
Yes,
everybody would be
yes.
talking about it,
Right.
and they would,
so it just shows how much the NHS is kind of captured and has capitulated.
But I mean, you compare the NHS. I gave an example yesterday in my report from Pakistan, from Pakistan, a media outlet in Pakistan, saying we really need to stop this cousin marriage law because it's having a really detrimental effect on people. There are lots of deformities, all of that kind of stuff. That's Pakistan, for God's sake. And our own National Health Service is, or was, because it's gone now, promoting this. Abomination is the only word I can use.
And just because it's gone from the database or from the, public profile or library or whatever, doesn't mean it's still not happening behind the scenes.
No.
As Amy knows, the NHS is rife with this kind of
This
thing.
was a memo, wasn't it? This was in a
It was
memo.
I think it was guidance for
it
patients.
was published on
I
NHS
think. It was
England.
guidance for patients.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you're quite right. It's basically that I ideologically captured to the point where you have to almost permit harm in order to keep your worldview intact.
Yeah, it's the same
that's-
with the gender stuff.
That's
isn't
happening
it?
right across the culture. You only have to look at the rape gangs. You know, how many spats have we had on social media and in the media with people who are saying, well, what about white rape? You know, they are being caught and they are being put in prison. You know, the whataboutery, the defense of these barbaric abomination practices is. It's just they will do anything to, as you say, preserve their worldview. Because if that goes, their whole identity collapses with it.
Something that doesn't happen to people on the right, actually.
Yeah.
You can discard certain things and you remain intact, actually, in your basic principle.
Yeah.
But on the whole, when you're talking ideology like this, you can't.
No, you can't. And this is why you can't have debates in universities or in school, because if you say to someone, trans women are men, then the trans person you're talking to, who embodies the idea, will then, of course, call you transphobic, and that's the end of the debate.
The thing is what we're all basically implicit in what we're saying, surely, is that the next government, reform, it's going to be reform, or they're certainly not going to be Tories, or anything, is it? That basically it is going to be beholden to them to actually turn the wheels around on all of this.
I don't envy them at all.
No.
What a job that is. I mean, that is gargantuan,
embedded, ensconced,
But
in
to
all
me,
of these places.
these things, like these particular points, like the burqa or cousin marriage, that's something that should just be outright banned. You should just ban cousin marriage and just say, that's something that they could do quite easily, I would have thought, these kind of issues.
Well, I mean, the reason it isn't actually illegal in this country is because it's never been an issue before.
No, exactly.
Right? And now it is. So we need to act upon it. And they have to do that. But as you say, Peter, they have so much stuff to do. And they, I keep saying it, but they need policies.
They need MPs.
And they need MPs. Well, they get MPs, but they need...
You say it used to be, you see, there's no law because it never used to happen. I mean, it reminds me rather of Queen Victoria when she signed the bill outlawing homosexuality. You know that lesbianism is not mentioned in this bill.
She didn't believe it existed.
Yeah, she said no lady would do such a thing.
She hasn't met Julie Bindle.
Exactly, yes. Lady? Anyway.
She's not a lady.
But the point is, with demographic change and all of these, as I say, cultural practices, are the way we make our laws, the way we govern ourselves, it needs to be fleet of foot.
This is all of a piece, it's all of a piece. Tomorrow I'm interviewing on the channel a lawyer who's done a report on Sharia. I mean, basically, that could have fitted in very well to today's discussion here. It's the same thing. It's about safeguarding young people. Because remember as well, with this first cousin marriage, there are implications for underage kids as well.
Yeah.
It's not just, two 20-year-olds being,
and presumably women and girls as well. Could be at risk, yeah.
Thank you very much. We're actually going to carry on just a little bit more for our members. So become a member and you can stay with us. But in the meantime, Peter, Amy and Philip, thank you very, very much indeed for your time. And we shall see you next week. Bye. Our mission at the New Culture Forum is and always has been to defend and celebrate Britain's history, culture and its people, and indeed Western civilization, at a time when both are under sustained attack. We have grown from small beginnings to become the country's most influential right-leaning cultural think tank. Our content is watched and read by some of Britain's most influential political figures. But now, we need your help. If you believe in what we do, then please do become a member. For as little as £4 a month, you can make a vital contribution to what we do. As a member of the NCF family, you will help ensure that we can continue to produce quality content online, such as our 3 weekly programmes, Whittle, which is our flagship interview show, Newspeak, our panel discussion show, and Deprogrammed, which is targeted at Britain's youth. As you probably know, in addition, we produce important documentaries, such as our critically acclaimed 6-part series, The West, a stunning celebration of the history and genius of Western civilization. And our ongoing documentary series, Heresies, with hard-hitting episodes tackling subjects such as immigration, gender ideology, and BBC bias. But the New Culture Forum is much more than a YouTube channel. We don't just complain about Britain, as it is, we provide real solutions and clear policies on how we can push back against the madness and restore sanity to this nation. Our presenters are now highly sought after and have become familiar faces across the media. Our prestigious annual Smith Lecture and our regional and indeed national conferences have attracted world-class speakers. Perhaps most importantly, we are the only organisation on the right of politics that has launched a national movement without actually being a political party. And uniquely, through our NCF Locals programme, we've established some 30 active branches in towns and cities right across the nation, from Edinburgh to Exeter, and with many more on the way. We're very proud of what we've achieved, and our members have made it possible. In return, our members receive access to exclusive content, invitations to private events, free or discounted tickets to our conferences and lectures, free copies of our books, and much more. I very much hope that you'll join us too by clicking the link in the description or going to our website, newcultureforum.org.uk. Now is the time that we need your help. Thank you.